This is the archipelago of Earthsea. Unlike the Eurocentric settings common in the genre, the inhabitants of these islands, including our protagonist, Dunny, naturally possess copper-brown skin. When Kargish raiders attack Dunny's home island of Gaunt, the invaders are the ones described with blonde hair and white skin. In 1968, this was a specific and deliberate reversal of standard fantasy racial roles. To defend his village, Dunny weaves a massive atmospheric fog that rolls down the hills, swallowing the landscape and confusing the raiders until they are driven back to their ships. Author Ursula K. Guin crafted this opening to mimic the rhythms of a traditional Chosen One origin story. This defensive act is a raw, instinctive scream of magic. Dunny is using power he hasn't studied and cannot yet control, relying on a desperate impulse to exert his will over the elements. The raiders flee, but the boy's victory reveals a terrifying instability. In Earthsea, unearned power represents a profound threat to the natural order, turning a moment of heroism into a demonstration of coming disaster. The great maid Guin the Silent recognizes this danger and takes Dunny as an apprentice, initiating him into adulthood by revealing his true name, Ged. Guin teaches Ged the central law of magic. Knowing a true name grants power over its essence, but using that power disrupts the universe's natural balance. Therefore, the greatest mages practice wu-wei, or non-action, preserving the equilibrium through a life of stillness. Ged finds Guin's quiet lessons of patience infuriating. He's an adolescent driven by an intense desire for active, visible spells to prove his superiority. A magical system built on fundamental restraint creates constant friction with a teenager who equates silence with weakness. Ged eventually leaves Guin to attend the prestigious wizarding school on Roke Island. His raw talent is undeniable, and he quickly outpaces his peers in his formal studies. At Roke, he meets Jasper, an older, aristocratic student whose condescending attitude triggers Ged's deep-seated insecurities. To prove his dominance over Jasper, Ged stops treating magic as a way to understand reality and begins using it as a tool for social status. This pride isolates him. Focusing on outdoing his rival, he loses sight of the cosmic laws of balance Guin tried to instill in him. The narrative conflict has turned entirely inward. Ged's unmanaged competitive pride has become the true escalating threat to the world of Earthsea. The tension reaches a snapping point during a school festival. Desperate to humiliate Jasper, Ged boasts that he possesses the power to summon a spirit from the land of the Lang. The spell fails with violent speed, tearing a physical, glowing rift through the fabric of the world and opening a path between life and death. A formless, faceless shadow beast erupts through the tear and immediately attacks Ged, clawing his face and nearly killing him. This creature is no external demon. It is the literal manifestation of Ged's own repressed darkness, finally escaping into the material world. This entity represents the Jungian shadow, the darker, hidden side of the human psyche that the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. The Archmage Nemerle is forced to intervene, sacrificing his entire life force to banish the shadow and seal the rift. Ged wakes up months later with a scarred face and a shattered ego, forever burdened by the knowledge that his arrogance caused the death of the Archmage. The conflict ends without a triumphant fanfare. Instead of a heroic trophy, Ged is left with a dead mentor and a humiliated spirit, a total, self-inflicted disaster. Ged's true challenge lies in the realization that the shadow cannot be defeated with a sword. Survival requires the agonizing work of facing and mastering his own internal darkness. In a typical fantasy story, the hero reacts to a crisis by finding a bigger sword or learning a stronger spell to blast the enemy away. That approach is completely impossible here. The magic of Earthsea operates on strict balance. As the masters of the wizard school teach, to light a candle is to cast a shadow. Every single spell creates an equal, unavoidable cosmic reaction. The author, Ursula K. Guin, specifically engineered this magic system to reject violence and dominance as a viable solution to conflict. This creates a fascinating paradox. If fighting back only causes more imbalance, Ged must figure out how to survive a lethal threat without committing an act of violence. Ged spends months fleeing across the ocean from island to island. Through this episodic flight, he begins to mature, deliberately avoiding direct combat to protect the people around him. He leans heavily into the study of the true name. In the old speech, everything has a specific name that defines its absolute essence. If a wizard knows that true name, they command the object entirely. We see him test this on an ancient dragon named Yevod. Ged doesn't draw a weapon. He guesses the creature's true name and forces a peaceful stalemate using his intellect, binding the dragon to an oath to never attack the archipelago. Shortly after, he faces the exact opposite scenario at the court of Terranon. A white-skinned noblewoman named Surette tempts him with an ancient stone of limitless dark power, a weapon that could easily destroy the entity hunting him. Ged refuses the stone. He recognizes that fighting dark magic with more dark magic would only corrupt his own soul. He chooses to remain vulnerable. Through these trials, Ged absorbs the hardest lesson of Earthsea. Ultimate power requires ultimate restraint. Exhausted and terrified, Ged eventually returns to his first master, a hermit named Guin, desperately looking for a way to stop running. Guin operates on the Taoist philosophical concept of wu wei, or action through non-action. He teaches that yielding is sometimes the only way to advance. The old master gives Ged a radical piece of advice. You cannot outrun a piece of yourself. He must stop fleeing and become the hunter. Ged turns his small boat around and sails directly toward the danger. He stops fighting the universe and agrees to face his own trauma. For his final voyage, Ged is joined by his loyal, dark-skinned friend Fetch. Together, they sail eastward, pushing far past the edges of all known maps. As they enter uncharted territory, the environment completely warps. The dark, rolling ocean physically stiffens and flattens into a dry, still expanse of desert sand beneath the hull of their wooden boat. The shadow approaches across this surreal landscape. As it nears, it torments Ged, rapidly shifting through the faces of his past before finally taking the form of a writhing monster. They haven't found a new continent. This physical edge of the world is a manifestation of the boundary between Ged's conscious mind and his deepest fears. A traditional hero would charge into battle here. Instead, Ged drops his magic staff and completely lowers his physical defenses. As the beast lunges, Ged speaks its true name aloud. The name is Ged. This moment relies heavily on the framework built by psychologist Carl Jung. Jung argued that to reach full maturity, a person must confront their shadow, the repressed, dark side of their own personality. The monster was never an external demon. It was a severed piece of Ged's own soul, born from his unchecked pride, his fear, and his refusal to accept his own mortality. Light and darkness merge. By claiming the creature, Ged physically absorbs the shadow back into himself, finally becoming whole. Le Guin leaves us with a quiet truth. True mastery is never achieved by violently crushing an enemy. It is achieved through the courage to embrace and integrate our own darkest flaws.